Up until recently, it seemed that some properties would remain unaffected by the SJW feminist plague that seems to be hellbent on destroying most forms of entertainment to spread their message of hate. These included smaller TV shows like The Expanse, shows critics hate like The Orville. The horror genre seems to have escaped relatively unscathed, and the MCU seemed to have sidestepped wokeness. As recently as less than a year ago, when we watched other franchises destroy themselves, we could be grateful that Kevin Feige had skillfully kept this garbage out of the MCU, and the MCU remained legitimately inclusive of everyone. Some have said that the wokeness began with Black Panther, but not really. The portrayal of Black Panther as an SJW film did not come from anybody involved from within the film itself. It came from the media. Nobody was attacking the fans. In fact, there seemed to be special care to avoid this from happening. The actors, some well-known, some not, seemed to go out of their way to endear themselves to the fans. The movie had the advantage of being good, with some excellent performances, and while I think the Oscar nomination was nothing more than pandering, you can't blame Black Panther for this. You can blame an entertainment industry that now emphasize wokeness points and inclusivity above everything else. Inclusivity, of course, as we all know, means no white males allowed. What a thoroughly messed up world we live in. How open discrimination became legally and socially acceptable is beyond me. People who themselves did nothing wrong are forced to pay for the sins of their ancestors, while those whose ancestors were the oppressed have now themselves become the oppressors with the help of Western legislators and the hateful shill media. The situation with Captain Marvel is quite different than it was with Black Panther. The media, as usual, is framing this in the way we would expect, and this is our definite proof that the day of the critic is over. Nobody trusts or respects these people anymore. The central problem with this film has come directly from within the film itself, from the star of the film, no less. Brie Larson is inherently unlikable. In fact, she might be one of the most unlikable actresses we've ever seen, and that is saying a lot. For people who constantly rail about privilege, you may want to give this individual a closer look. Larson's parents, both chiropractors, split when she was young, and Larson seems to have developed a special hatred of her father, which she would later take out on all white males. Larson was homeschooled, probably where she got used to being the center of the universe, and this probably helped turn her into the hateful person she is now. She was admitted to some fancy-ass acting school and moved to LA with her mother so the little princess could fulfill her acting ambitions. Larson complained that she had to live in a small apartment with her mother while doing this, but didn't seem to complain when she was being handed acting roles before the age of 10, developing one of the worst cases of child actor syndrome we've ever seen. Our poor oppressed princess appeared on a bunch of talk shows, television shows, and movies, and then decided that she was a musician. Remember back in the early 2000s when you had all these teenage white girls with no talent to speak of being handed record contracts in hopes that they would be the next Avril Lavigne? As more and more princesses were being handed contracts, the quality kept getting worse and worse, and this was probably one of the things that led to the death of the music industry. In 2005, our spoiled little brat released her first and only album, Finally Out of PE. Out of the barrage of spoiled princess music from the period, this album must be the worst. It's not just bad, it's shockingly bad. It's horrifically bad. If you can handle it, I would suggest checking out a music video called She Said, which is available on YouTube. Larson would have been 15 or 16 at the time this crap was recorded, and comes across as the most spoiled little shit you've ever seen. Perhaps she was just born nasty and unpleasant. Larson went on to do a bunch more movies after her horrific failure of a music career, and won an Academy Award for Room, which I have no interest in seeing, and since award shows, and especially the Oscars, are complete woke bullshit now anyway, winning this award doesn't impress me in the slightest. When Captain Marvel was first announced, I didn't really think much of it, other than the fact that this was a character I'd never heard of. But like many people, I questioned why we were getting this and not a Black Widow movie, which we had been wanting for years. Why aren't we getting a Black Widow movie? Everybody loves this character in Scarlett Johansson. If a Black Widow movie was going to be released in less than a week, then we would not be having this conversation. We would be talking about how excited we were and that it was about time after waiting for almost a decade. But we aren't getting a Black Widow movie this weekend. Instead, we're getting this shit. As soon as Brie Larson opened her mouth, my fucking god, the whole situation changed. The MCU, which had sidestepped SJW BS for years, unlike Marvel Comics, was now in the middle of what was becoming the most egregious feminist SJW slap in the face to long-term fans we've ever seen. Honestly, guys and gals, this is on a whole new scale. We got our first clue about just how toxic Larson was last summer, when she proclaimed that she didn't want to hear what 40-year-old white dudes had to say about the dumpster fire that was A Wrinkle in Time. We also started to learn that Captain Marvel was being poised to be the most strongest superhero ever. This raised alarm bells, especially as we had just witnessed Mary Sue Ray displace classic Star Wars heroes for no reason other than the fact that she was the bestest ever. We had been following the existing Marvel heroes for a decade now, and it was being implied that they were being displaced by this woke warrior. It seemed almost like the whole of Infinity War was nothing but a setup so Captain Nasty could come in and save the day. I really hope this isn't the case, because if it is, then the MCU might as well do a complete reboot because it's over. When the trailer first came out, many people started to ask the question, how exactly did this woman win an Oscar? Marvel movies are supposed to be fun, and what we saw was a humorless killjoy with no facial expressions. Many men started to joke that Captain Nasty reminded them more of their ex-wives than an MCU hero. Ideology aside, this really isn't going to entice anybody to get overly excited about your movie. But then there was the ideology, and holy shit, her daddy issues started to become more and more apparent. God help you if you ask Larson out for a coffee. Don't compliment her at the gym, because that's hateful, and Lord help you if you ask her to smile. Smiling is a form of patriarchal oppression, and Captain Nasty will make sure you know it. Then there was that absolutely disgusting Instagram post after the death of the great Stan Lee, posing with her embroidered purse and stupid-looking shoes. You weren't thinking about Stan Larson. After all, he was the victim of unfounded and hateful Me Too allegations near the end of his life. This post was about Brie Larson and how great she is. How much better she is than the rest of us. Insulting one of the greatest men in the history of the entertainment industry after his death. Fuck you. You are one of the most reprehensible people to ever come across movie screens. She didn't endear herself to anybody when she advocated for open discrimination of white males during her press tour either. The internet exploded over that one. Some people were calling her interview with that poor white dude that looked absolutely terrified an apology. No it wasn't. Anything that might have been misconstrued as an apology was nothing more than sarcasm. And what was with those eyes? Christ, she's batshit crazy too. I think it was at this point that Disney started to panic. Opening weekend projections for Captain Marvel, which had initially been as high as 160 to 180 million, had started dropping to around 80 million. Having already watched what was supposed to be their prized possession, Star Wars, destroy itself, they now sensed the same thing happening to the MCU because of this one little narcissist. It was at this point that they did what was probably one of the stupidest things they could have done. Pressure Rotten Tomatoes to remove the want to see option and pre-release audience comments. Rotten Tomatoes has attempted to make the case that this had nothing to do with Captain Marvel, but we aren't that stupid. Changing your website suddenly in the middle of the night with no forewarning as Captain Marvel's public perception is tanking because of the twisted little narcissist Disney and the MCU decided to cast raises a few suspicions. Sorry Fandango, but we know exactly what is going on here. It's also noteworthy that the president of Fandango is former Disney digital executive Paul Yanover. It was at this point that the Captain Marvel situation officially became a full-blown PR disaster. Actually, it's a complete shit show at this point. We also had the hilarity of Larson supporting girl-only ticket buying campaigns to see her movie, something that she will profit from personally. Here's an idea. How about Larson and Disney pay for the tickets themselves and make sure they are available to underprivileged kids from both genders? Actually, perhaps you should take them to a different movie, because this kind of hateful indoctrination can't be good for still developing minds. Well, Marvel and Disney, it didn't have to be this way. Perhaps you should have kept your rabid star on a leash. Perhaps you should have taken a closer look at who you were casting beforehand. I can only imagine how many people will probably end up losing their jobs over this. Can you imagine being Bob Iger right now? How do you explain to your shareholders that you let not one but two of your biggest franchises sink in the name of ideological wokeness? Disney doubled down, and they are probably going to lose. Rather than evoke censorship, how about you make a public statement denouncing everything Larson has said? How about you let your customers know that you don't hate them? You know, the people that have kept your franchise vibrant for over a decade. How about you show some fucking respect? You had every opportunity, but you decided to take the stupid route. It remains to be seen whether or not Captain Marvel will outright bomb, but I'd say it's pretty obvious that Brie Larson has cost Disney hundreds of millions of dollars at this point. Most hardcore MCU fans are thoroughly disgusted with what they have seen, and this includes both male and female fans. Many women sure as hell don't like hateful ideologues like Larson, and most women are not third-wave feminists and SJWs. They have more common sense than that. Many MCU fans are now outright boycotting this movie, and I might join this boycott myself, which will be the first time I've actively boycotted anything. I've never seen anything like the Brie Larson Captain Marvel debacle, and I don't think I've ever seen this level of anger amongst any fandom. And given the past few years, that's saying a lot. At least with other franchises, there is some hilarity in the way their self-destruction played out. I don't see any humor in the Captain Marvel situation. Marvel and Disney cannot count on die-hard fans this time around. Their only hope is that the oblivious general public will come out in droves. I don't know about you, but if I had kids, there's no way I'd be taking them to this movie. And that's it for today. Don't forget to subscribe and follow me on Twitter. And as always, everyone, thank you for watching, and have a great day.